Hi, come on in. Welcome back. How was your lunch meeting? Oh, good. I'm glad to hear that. Yeah, go ahead, have a seat, make yourself comfortable. Yeah. Um, on the table next to you there, we actually have a binder for you. You see it? It matches this one. Yeah, there you go. That's it. Great. Okay, well, we have about 30 minutes available to walk you through everything for your board meeting this afternoon. So we've got this binder. We both have one with all of the material printed, including all the appendix material in case you need to dive in. It's all tabbed and marked just the way that you like it. Yeah, let's go ahead and I'll walk you through this. Perfect. All right, so first we'll start here on the front. You can see we both have these sticky notes. So we have your cue and your talking speed reminder. I know that you're self-conscious about how you sometimes speed up when you're excited. So we have the slow and steady reminder and the pause between key points reminder. Do you want me to add any others? Okay, yeah, just one that just says slow. I can do that. With underlines. Okay. There's a sticky note or a sticky pad next to you if you want to do the same. We'll have the same ones. Great. Perfect. Any others? Okay. All right, so on the front page, we have the official agenda for the Q2 meeting. This is the one that the board distributed. You can see here, they're both marked up with some blue ink. Yeah, so I've added a few cues that you can use at a glance if you need to help with recalibrating mid-meeting. Yeah, of course. We'll walk through it together. And if there's anything else you want me to flag, just let me know. Okay. So let's see. So we're going to be starting with, of course, the welcome and opening remarks by the board chair. As you know, the board chair generally sticks really close to a script. So you could just expect it to be some pleasantries, a quick nod to the strategic agenda. You can expect that they will probably mention last quarter's progress at a high level, and then they're going to hand things off to you. Yeah, they tend to hand the mic off with a smile and just say something like, let's start with your view on the quarter, something like that. Okay, and then you'll be up. So the first thing that you're going to be covering is the executive update. There's 10 minutes slotted for this. So this is going to be your first anchor moment. You're going to want to set the tone, the energy, and the direction. If you can make this sound clear and calm and confident, it'll help shape how they receive everything after. You just kind of want to prime them. Yeah, totally. 10 minutes sounds like forever. I promise you it'll go really fast. There's actually 3 things that you're going to want to cover. I have them written on here in the blue ink. And that's the current position, the key decisions, and the strategic horizon. You are super familiar with these 3 things, so I'm not worried. I know you're a little worried about the 10 minutes. You don't have to fill up the 10 minutes. Nobody's going to be mad if you give time back at the end. Just make sure you cover everything that's relevant to them. And if you can do that while talking slowly, if you can do that quicker than the 10 minutes, that's perfectly fine. I wouldn't be worried about that at all. Yeah. Yeah, at the bottom here, actually, I wrote down a couple of short transition phrases that you can use to pivot between the sections without sounding too robotic. I know sometimes you worry that you sound robotic. I don't think you sound robotic at all, but in case you want something to help you transition, I did write those down here for you. Yeah. Okay. So then after your executive update, you're going to give the financial review, the operations and supply chain, marketing and brand, and then the big one, the strategic initiative preview. We're going to cover those in the tabs here in a moment. But just so you know what'll be coming up next and sort of the sequence of events, that's how that's going to go. And then there'll be a board Q&A and discussion. So this one tends to run long. They only give it 10 minutes. You can expect it to be a bit longer than 10 minutes. They call it a discussion. You could just expect it to be rapid fire questions though. I actually have a section here that we're going to talk about in a little bit called Risks and Rebuttals, and this is going to be the questions that I think you should expect to answer as part of that board Q&A, and I've given you some ways that you can answer those questions, but we'll cover that in just a few, okay? Great. Okay, after the board Q&A discussion is done, they're going to move into an executive session, which is the board only. So that's just them. You'll be stepping out of the room, and I'll have your tea and your notes ready in the hallway, and we can debrief while they wrap up. Yeah, they'll just politely say to get out of the room. They'll say it politely, but you'll know. They'll tell you when they're ready to move on. Yeah. Okay. Great. So that's the agenda. So now we're gonna go through the tabs here. So let's go ahead and flip to tab 1. And this is the Q1 financials. So this one you can see, it's a bit dense, lots of numbers, but don't worry, I've sorted it all out for you. I've gotten it all organized, and it's color coded. So if you can take a look, you'll see that we have the green highlights. Those are, of course, the positives. Those are your wins. Those speak for themselves, really. You'll just want to make sure you hit on those. And then we also have some that are yellow highlights, which are kind of neutral, but I just want you to be aware of them because they may or may not ask a question about those yellow highlights. And then we also have pink highlights as well. And those are the ones that I want you to keep your eyes out for. So these are maybe vulnerable spots or areas where you can expect them to ask questions. So you can just breeze through the green, maybe hover slightly over the yellow, and just be ready with good framing for the ones in red. Yeah, that's a good question. Okay, can you go to the next page with me? Yeah, there's this section down here. It's all highlighted in pink. You see it? Yes. Okay, so that section has the year-over-year margin variance. So it's pink. Like, you know, they're probably going to ask questions about it because it's probably going to stand out a bit. So it looks like there was a big drop, but really it's only a slight dip. If you look at the X and the Y axes, you can kind of see how the way they have it labeled makes it look bigger than what it really is. It's just a slight dip. It's nothing alarming. You and I both know this group. They're going to ask questions about it. But you've already got the tight explanation for this. But it is there for you. And I know you're already prepared to answer that question. And you can bring up the framing on that. It's not exactly the greatest graph, but that's what finance sent over, so that's what we've got to use, unfortunately. Yeah. Yeah, in the back, we'll actually just, if you go to tab 6, all of this back here, you can see the orange tabs. That has all of the appendix information, and it has a breakdown of the data by business unit. So that way, if they want to dig in, you can just flip there. Again, it's marked with the tabs. You can see it. There's some labeling. Ooh, there's some labeling on there. So you can flip back there if you need to. Yes. Okay. Yeah, I can do that. If I get that to you in about 30 minutes, would that be okay? Okay, yeah, let me just write that down. Add a cleaned up version of that graph. Okay, yeah, I can do that. That way it's no longer misleading, for sure. Okay. So now if you can flip to tab 2. So this one is all the partner updates. So you're going to be briefly covering the partner updates. If they ask any questions, we'll be writing them down, and I'll be watching on Zoom. So I'll be writing them down. You don't have to worry about that. And we can get back to them. That's how this typically works. So they'll be expecting that. You don't have to know the answers to these other folks. But there are some questions that you might be able to answer. So let's just briefly go over the different updates, and I'll give you a few little ideas to sprinkle in. Yes. Okay. So let's start with ops. So Tim is very excited, maybe a little too excited, to showcase his new KPI framework. I looked over it. In theory, it's actually really solid, but he hasn't tested the rollout yet, so it's not fully baked. I would say if no one brings it up, I just let it sit. But if someone asks, you can just sort of give a supportive nod over to Tim and then pivot to the real win, which is the reduction in shipping delays. That's quantifiable, that's clean. I think that'll make them feel good. Yeah, of course. All right, next we have marketing. So Katie kindly dropped the updated Q2 projections last night at 11 p.m. So thank you, Katie. I know, very like her. But that's okay. I went ahead and reprinted the entire section this morning. So what you're holding is the freshest data. Some of the highlights you can see. Their spring campaign is tracking well. The email click-through is up 11%. And then also paid engagements looking stronger than forecasted. Those are all good news. You'll want to mention that just in case anyone's still stuck on last quarter's underperformance, just make sure you mention the stronger than forecasted. Yeah, I think it'll help reset the narrative. It's a good narrative. It's a good story. Yeah. Also, I did want to give you a heads up that Katie embedded a QR code in the back for the campaign dashboards. So don't feel like you need to show it at all, but if someone asks about some real-time tracking, you can just point them to the QR code and that'll get them there. Any questions? Okay, next page. All right, next page is HR's section. So you can see that this is pretty thin. As you know, they're still finalizing their full talent strategy deck, and that's what's going to be covered in next month's session with the board. So what you have here is more of a preview rather than a pitch. I just recommend you give a quick nod to their leadership coaching pilot, just so that it's on the record, and then you can move on. They're not going to be expecting you to speak for them. They're just going to want to make sure that you're looped in. So they'll be happy to see that you are looped into what's going on. Yeah. Okay. And then finally, we do have legal. So there's not really a whole page on here. It's a little bit sparse. They really only submitted a one-line update about vendor compliance audits and everything came back clean. So there's not much to say there. I did add some extra just to our versions, some extra information about those audits in case questions come up. I don't think that's going to happen though, but it's there just in case. Great. Okay, next we can go to tab 3. There you go. Yep, that one. All right, so these are the board member profiles. I know that you know this board pretty well, but I went ahead and added a refresher sheet for each member, just in case you want to reference maybe some of their recent activity, their public stances, maybe some little cues about what they tend to care about. Those cues are actually on the sticky note here at the bottom. Yeah. So you don't need to study these or anything. I just wanted to make sure you had this just in case. You want me to go a little bit deeper? Sure. Okay, let's cover it real quick. Do you have a pen? Okay, good. All right, so let's start with Kim. So she's new to the board, but she's already super active. She just joined Voltura, which is that clean tech startup, and it's making some waves in the carbon neutral infrastructure. So I would bet that she's probably going to bring up ESG today. So if you reference our Q2 sustainability spend or touch on supplier transparency, she's going to tune in. And that could actually be a really good chance to pull her in since she's relatively new. Yeah. Yeah, that's a good point. She's also a fan of measured risk language. So if you mention measured risk or phrase our growth strategy with that framing, it's probably going to resonate with her. Okay, next up we have Marjorie. As you know, she's been with us the longest. I don't know if you've noticed, but I've noticed that she's recently been sort of increasingly vocal about ethics in sourcing. She pushed really hard during the last meeting on supplier accountability, especially in offshore procurement. So if you mention our procurement consolidation win, be sure to include the transparency angle. That'll land better with her than just the efficiency talk. I did have that on here. You can see transparency. Yes. Also, she really does like specifics, and I've noticed that generalizations seem to bother her. So if she asks a question, I would recommend that you include some sort of stat or a metric, even just something small. Yeah. Okay. Next up, we have Leo. So he's our scale guy. He's always thinking global. He's always thinking or asking what's next. So he's probably going to push again on APAC expansion. So if it does come up, you don't need to commit to anything. But if you say something like, we're modeling for regional readiness in 2025, something like that will satisfy him for now. Yeah. He tends to like aspirational, but anchored. No pie in the sky stuff. Yeah. Yeah, he really does like to feel like the forward thinker in the room. So if you could acknowledge his insight, even just briefly, that should keep him collaborative instead of combative. I know sometimes he can be a little strong-willed, if you will. Yeah. Yeah, you can do that. And then finally, we have Grant. I know you know him pretty well. He's quiet. He doesn't really speak unless it really matters. So if he does speak, it's important. And when he does speak, it's almost always data-driven. He's your numbers guy. So he's probably going to be scanning through all of those numbers while all the others are still catching up. If he asks any questions, it'll probably be something about clarifying assumptions in the data. And I just want to be really clear. He does not really look for showmanship. He just wants it dry. He wants accuracy and clarity. So if you just use some clean language, you'll have him in your corner. Yeah. And then again, here's the post-it note with what they care about. So I just added some bullet points with just some words. We have measured risk, specifics, light data, scalability, transparency. If you can get in maybe 3 of these into what you're talking about even, that should be enough for the board to feel seen. They'll like that. Yeah, totally. It's not about tailoring the entire message. If you just weave in a few of these words or concepts, that's all that's going to matter. Okay. Now, if we go to tab 4. So this is the strategy initiative section. So this is the big thing. This is what they're going to be listening to the very most. And this is the heart of your session. So you're not just giving an update here. You're really going to be shaping how this board thinks about the next 12 to 18 months or so. So I really prepped for this one carefully. You've got your full deck printed here. Yes. You've got a note section in case you need it. On the side here, I'll hand them to you in a moment. I actually have some cue cards as well, just with some headlines and phrasing. That way, if you want to glance down, you don't have to flip through these pages. Although, if you flip through the pages, they won't be offended. They'll be perfectly fine with that, but it's totally up to you. Yeah. So let's walk through some of the key points. So my first recommendation is to start really strong. I wouldn't just call this an initiative. This is about precision growth. That's the phrase I kept seeing you gravitate towards in your notes. And I think that really positions you as ambitious, but not recklessly ambitious. And it's strategic, but not slow. So I think that people like Kim will really appreciate that measured tone. And Leo will hear the word growth and perk right up. Marjorie likes that it'll be grounded in structure, not just in scale. So if you go with that framing, I think that will really hit home for most of the board. Yeah. Okay, so then the next slide, this is your first anchor slide. So this is where you reframe the initiative as measured boldness, not reactive, not status quo, just calibrated momentum. You can say something about, this isn't about rushing forward. This is about moving with confidence because our foundation can finally support the pace that we need. Exactly. That's the narrative they're going to want to hear. We're not really tinkering anymore. We're ready. We have a plan. We're confident, and we have the infrastructure that we need. Yes. Okay. Next over here this is slide 4. Yes. So this is where you introduce the operational realignment. So quick flag. We're saying realignment. We really want to avoid the words restructure, and we want to avoid the word reorg. We'll use things like realignment, team evolution, functional alignment. Yeah, that restructure or reorg, those words tend to spook people. They tend to think layoffs. It tends to cause some chaos, to be honest. So if we use the realign, evolution, etc., those are more clear. They imply more of a forward motion without implying any disruption. Yeah, I know it's pretty subtle, but it really changes the emotional tone in the room. Okay, and then slide 6 down here. Okay, don't forget on the slide to bring it back to resource optimization. We're not cutting, we're optimizing. We're not trimming the fat, we're investing wisely. That's a really important distinction. Yeah, they're really going to care about that. Okay, yeah, flipping to the next page, slide 7. This is your close or your conclusion slide. So you'll want to do something or say something that leaves the room feeling really steady. Not hyped up necessarily, but steady. So I'd go with something like, it's not about doing more, it's about doing what matters better. And then you could just let it breathe, say it slowly, stop talking, let them absorb it. The pause is where the power lands. Exactly, yes. You don't have to sell it, you just have to own it. And then finally, there's, 4 slides here that are wildcard slides I added at the end of the deck. So this is just in case anyone asks you where we're going after Q3, it's on here. I don't know whether they're gonna ask about that or not, but just in case they do, you'll be a step ahead and you have them here. Yes, okay. Okay, I'll add an appendix bumper slide. Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, we don't want to accidentally go too far and they see the next slides that maybe you're not intending them to see. So I'll add that bumper slide in so that can't happen. That was a really good idea. Is that also okay to do in about a half hour or so? To get that over to you? Okay, yeah, I'll absolutely do that. Okay. Any questions on the strategic slides? Okay. All right, now we'll move on to tab 5. Okay, so this is your risk and rebuttal section. So here is where I have prepared for you for the Q&A section from the board. Yeah. Okay, so I went ahead and pulled 5 of the questions that I think you're most likely to face. I really took into account previous meetings we've had with the board, some of these sort of rumblings that I've heard around, gossip, if you will, offhand comments. And then I also considered the body language from the last board Q&A and put that all together to come up with the questions I think they're probably going to ask you. And then I have, in your voice, framed some ideas of how you can respond to those. Yeah, my pleasure. Okay, so let's talk about the first question. So the first potential question is something about how margins are down and what's going to be the long-term fix. Yes. Yeah, you can see it here. So this one I would expect to come from Grant, maybe Leo. And what I would recommend is to not apologize and to not over-explain. So you can say something about how margins compressed really temporarily due to the upfront infrastructure costs, primarily tied to fulfillment and onboarding, but that those costs flattened by Q4, and so we're already seeing improved throughput. Yeah, just like clean, proactive, forward-looking, owning it, and being truthful. This is already looking better. There was a reason, and we're already seeing it being improved. Correct. Okay. All right, next we have questions about headcount growth and whether that's sustainable. So you can expect this to come up if the HR metrics also come up, or if someone just happens to glance at the org chart in the appendix. So again, I think you're just really clean, you're really clear, you're really honest, and you're really optimistic because that's the truth. So you can tell them that hiring was front-loaded to meet demand and to stabilize ops, and that we're already tapering back to the planned baseline as we shift into optimization mode. And that's where your strategy comes in, right? Exactly. Yeah, you just want to answer their concern without making it sound like you're walking anything back. Okay. Next we have a question about why strategy is shifting now. Like, why are we doing this now? I just don't want you to be caught off guard. This question can sometimes sound a little hostile, but I wouldn't think of it that way. It's probably just curiosity. So the answer you give just needs to show confidence. You can tell them that we're finally equipped to shift strategy now, because now the infrastructure's there, we have the teams in place, and that now is a good timing that allows us to grow without compromising on execution. And Kim will really like that because it sounds really thoughtful and not reactionary. What do you think about that? Yes. Okay, good. All right, the fourth question you can expect is about managing supplier risk. I think you can expect this one because this is Marjorie's current favorite topic. She brings it up all the time. And she's really going to want to hear two things, really. She wants to hear the words full audit and 100% compliance. If you get her to hear those two things, she will move right on. So you can just say how we've completed a full audit, that there's been 100% compliance, and you can even add in that we've also initiated that alternate vendor relationship strategy to diversify exposure and avoid dependency. Yeah. Of course. And then the last question to expect is something about what do we do if the exit plan doesn't work. So what they're really asking is, are you prepared for failure? Do you have a mitigation plan in place? So this is going to be really important for you to emphasize that you have built this strategy to be modular. So we can adjust the phase pacing, we can adjust the scope, all of that based on early indicators without reversing the entire direction, because you have intentionally built this to be modular and agile. Yeah. Want me to add that to a sticky to the front? Modular. Okay. Modular. Add this to the front. Okay. Yeah, you can use this sticky pad. Great. Okay, and then one last tip for this section. If they ask you any unexpected questions, tough questions, things that you don't know how to answer, it's perfectly okay for you to pause for a beat before answering. I know you like answering really quickly, totally understand, But I think that they will appreciate even a single second of a pause. It makes you sound like you have really considered their question, and it makes you sound more measured, in my opinion. And it also lets the room lean in instead of react. Yes. Yes, exactly. You are not here to defend the strategy. You're here to demonstrate that you have thought through it carefully, that you've carefully considered what they've asked for. And that's true. You have, by the way. Great. Okay, last section here. We talked about this a little bit. Tab 6. And this is where we have all of the different tabs here that for the appendixed information. So if they ask any super detailed questions, you can easily flip through. Like you can see this one here is the marketing plan. You can flip through to get to the deeper, more granular information and be able to answer their questions. Of course. Okay, well that covers it for your prep and your binder. Yeah. Okay. So everything is all set. You have got the expertise, you've got the logic, you've got the language, you've got the knowledge. Just remember, this room is already inclined to trust your direction. They just need to feel the clarity that you have about this, the amount of thoughtfulness that you've put into making sure that this strategy will be successful. Of course. So I'm going to be watching on Zoom. If you need anything, notes, slides, an extra handout, I've totally got you covered, and I will be looking out for you. So if I see that maybe there's something that you need, I can ping you with any responses. Would that be okay? Yeah, it won't look weird for you to look at your computer. So if they have a question that you can't answer and I can answer or give you pointers on, I will just ping them to you. And I'll only do that if it's really necessary. Of course, we're a team. Okay, so do you have any other questions, or is there anything else I can do for you right now? Okay. I hear what you're saying. And honestly, maybe, but that's totally okay. You're not here to sell a finished product. You're here to show that the thinking is finished and that you've left room for their input. Exactly. So if someone pushes, you just anchor to that part about modular rollout. And again, I liked your recommendation to add that sticky. And when you say that, they're going to hear flexibility without mistaking it for uncertainty. They'll see it as being agile. Of course. Okay. You've got everything that you need. If you have any other questions, just let me know. I will get these couple things done in the next 30 minutes and I'll send them your way. If there's anything else, please let me know. Again, I'll be watching and I will have your tea ready for you once you exit the room and we can debrief then. But I have full confidence in you. You're going to rock this. Great. Good luck.